Welcome to Owner Optional, a podcast for business owners who want companies that run without them. I'm James, your host. I've been a small business consultant all across the country for about 10 years now, and I've been a small business owner myself for about 20. Together, we break down how to build real businesses, not jobs, so that they can become assets that can grow, scale, be sold, and ultimately run without you. If you want freedom, leverage, and long-term value, you're in the right place. For more information, you can visit our website at lotuspe.us. That's lotuspe.us. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show. Today, we are joined by Nick Edwards.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going, Nick?
It's going well, man. How are you?
Good. So Nick is our CRO at Lotus, and that's our Chief Revenue Officer. Nick is responsible for sales and really just the customer experience, making sure that it's consistent, it's high quality, and he really does a great job with all of that. So what's up, man? Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive into all this stuff.
Yeah, this is a newer podcast, and I think it'll be really cool to help people understand a little bit more about business and how to grow something that kind of runs without them. Mm-hmm. So Nick, tell us about your history. Where did you start?
Yeah, so started out in the automotive industry when I was 16 years old. Wanted to get a job because I was tired of asking my parents for money. I think everybody who's around 15, 16 years old in this kind of 21st century knows that feeling. They want to be self-sufficient. So I went out. I was looking for anybody that would hire a 16-year-old. There was an auto shop down the street to me. They were like, hey, we'll hire you. We'll pay you cash. You'll sweep the floors. You'll learn how to do some oil changes, tire rotations, and just kind of help out. And I was like, sure. They were like, we'll give you $8 an hour. I was like, fantastic. Like, that's $8 more an hour than I had before. So I started doing that. I was doing that while I was a junior going into a senior in high school. Did it throughout my entire senior year part-time. Then when I graduated high school, I went to college. Went to college part-time and worked full-time. Slowly kind of realized that, I was really passionate about the automotive field, and I realized I didn't really need a degree in order to pursue a career in that.
What'd you go to college for?
Originally, I was going to college for sports marketing because sports was kind of my passion. But then, I saw so many of my friends who were getting degrees and they were becoming DoorDash drivers and Domino drivers. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I didn't really have the advantage of my parents funding my entire college. So if I wanted to stay in college, I would have had to take out a loan. And I didn't want to take out a loan and become a DoorDash driver because how am I going to make a $400 or $500 monthly payment while doing DoorDash? So I made the decision when I was 19 years old to just drop out of college, go full-time in the automotive industry. Started out as a tech, was doing oil changes, tires, brakes. Quickly realized that I wasn't playing into my wheelhouse. A couple of my bosses were like, hey, you're really good with the people, but you're kind of slow as a technician. Like, you're not as, what's the word I'm looking for? You're not as precise as a technician should be, but you're really good with customers. Do you want to try being a CSR for a little bit and see how that goes? And I was like, sure. I didn't really love being a technician. It was a lot of manual work that I wasn't really accustomed to. Didn't work on my own car outside of work, wasn't really a big car guy. And I think that showed. So I moved to the front counter. So I was a CSR. I was just answering phones. And then very quickly I realized as a CSR, there's so much you can do outside the confines of your role. So quickly, my job was pretty much answer phones, sell people tires. That's it. But quickly, anytime a manager was out, I would be like, hey, let me write that estimate. Hey, let me grab that. Let me take that customer home. Hey, I can sell that job. And so very quickly, probably, within 6 months, I went from a CSR to a full-time service advisor. 4 months after that, I was the full-time service manager on the weekends when we didn't have another service manager. And then I kind of moved that into becoming a store manager. So I was a store manager at a local chain of automotive buildings in Virginia. And then they gave me a few other stores. So by the time I was about 24, I had 3 stores that I was going from store to store, managing KPIs, revenue, pretty much everything that I kind of wanted to be what I pictured for myself at 16 years old. And then I realized that there is a lot of volatility in the automotive chain business. So it's much different from like an independent shop where they have one facility. They're kind of like a staple in their community, which is huge. These kind of chain auto shops that you get, they're more like people just know they're there. They know they're quick. They're kind of like McDonald's. Like, you're not going to go there. You're not going to know who's serving you. You're not going to know who worked on your car, but you're going to get a very economic service, and it might not be the best service, but you're going to get what you pay for. And I realized the volatility in that because from the time I was 25 to the time I was 27, my shop got sold and had a new manager 3 times.
Why? What was going on with it? They sold it that much.
So the first time it got sold was because the shop that I was working at was also a gas station, and the guy that owned all the other chains says he wanted to get out of the gas business. He wanted to just be automotive, so he sold every location that was a gas station. So we get sold to a national gas conglomerate. They don't know anything about automotive. They take a look at the books, and because we're no longer backed by the 20 other stores we have, our books are way off. So they probably kept us for 5 months, and they were like, this shop isn't making any money because the business model was built on having 20 other stores. So when our store, which was doing between $90,000 and $100,000 a month in revenue, which was fine, we had 18 other stores that were doing between $150,000 and $200,000 in revenue, and they looked at it as a whole picture, not just one store. It was more so like, we have a wide company goal to maintain this revenue. So it didn't matter what your store was doing because someone else would pick up the slack. Well, when you get sold to someone who's done in automotive, they're looking just at your books. You no longer have anybody who is going to pick up your slack. You don't have extra revenue from other stores. So they sold us. That's when I kind of made the decision. I had met my now wife, Kathleen. She lived in Massachusetts. I lived in Virginia. I was like, look, there's a lot of like volatility going on where I'm at right now. I feel like I could get an automotive job pretty much anywhere I go. And we were engaged at the time. So I was like, what if I just moved to Massachusetts? So moved to Massachusetts, and within probably 2 months of sitting on my butt doing nothing, I was like, I got to go work. Like, I need to work. So put out a bunch of applications. I applied at chains. I applied at local independents, found Precision Auto, got an interview. And I tell James this all the time. I had the full intention to get hired and just write service and not do anything else. Stay in my lane, write service.
But that's not you at all.
Yeah, but it wasn't me at all. Probably within, a month of being here and just writing service, I started, going to James and giving him random ideas I had and stuff on how to make things more efficient. And, James took those in stride. So I'm just like, now he kind of sits me down and he goes, hey, where do you want to be in 10 years?
Me.
Yeah.
Me.
Sorry. Yeah, you. He goes, hey, where do you want to be in 10 years? And I was like, I don't know. I want to be able to be self-sufficient. I don't want to have any debt. I don't necessarily want to own my own business, but I want to be a part of something. And so you kind of gave me guidance, and now you've given me this awesome role where I can kind of manage KPIs of multiple businesses. And it feels a lot more like what I was doing in Virginia, but on a much better scale, because instead of doing it for a chain automotive, I'm doing it for local independent businesses that are staples in their community. There's no volatility there. There's no I'm going to walk in and it's going to be a new owner. There's no, I'm going to call a customer and they're going to have no idea what company I'm calling from, what location I'm calling from. So the stability of it all is really the best part. And then the second best part is just being able to do something in my wheelhouse, which is take a look at numbers and revenue and customer experience it and fine tuning it all.
How do you think that or what do you think your secret is? So for you anyways, what we saw in you was just that you are a runner. You want to go, your mind kind of works like mine. It's going at all hours of the day. I was talking to, was on a podcast the other day with Carm Capriata, and he was talking about how at 2 a.m. he wakes up all the time and, has ideas. You kind of have that same mentality. How do you take that and turn that into such a high quality, consistent experience for the customer that you're also able to duplicate within the businesses? Because you run a couple businesses with us, and the experience is just very high quality, and you're able to pass that on to other writers.
Yeah, I think the biggest key you need in order to do this is the ability to empathize with people. That's it. I think empathy and confidence are the biggest tools that any person in a need-based service industry can have. You need to be able to empathize and realize that, whether you're in automotive, pest, plumbing, HVAC, you are providing a service that that person needs. And when you're providing a need-based service, there are three things people look for. They look for price, they look for speed, and they look for trust. You cannot control the price. The price is kind of dictated by the market around you, right? So you don't have a lot of control over that. Speed, you can have control over by having the right guys in the right place at the right time. Trust is what you have the most control over, and the way you gain that trust is by delivering a product that you're confident in, that you would put in your own home, car, restaurant, whatever it is. And then finally, you're treating everybody like they're a part of your family. A lot of these people who get into these need-based service industries, they are selling just to sell. They're not selling solutions, they're selling a product. And I find that when a customer, whether they have their brakes are grinding, or I have rats in my basement, or my toilet doesn't work, you're not going there to sell them a toilet. You're not going there to sell them rat kill. You're not going there to sell them brakes. You're going to sell them peace of mind. For the brakes, you're selling them a way that their car can be reliable so they can get from point A to point B. They can spend time with their family. They can go to work, and they can not worry about that one thing in their life. Same thing with pests, same thing with plumbing. They have a problem. You're not giving them a new toilet. You're not just going in there, taking the rat out, saying goodbye, have a good day. You're giving them peace of mind to live life the way they want to live. And as long as you attack it with that angle, I think anybody can be wildly successful in this industry.
Yeah, so you're selling a solution.
Yep.
Just building a relationship, and you do that each and every single day, and you're incredible at it. So part of what we do is we work with a lot of different business owners that are they're trying to either sell their business or they're trying to hand their business down to somebody else, and we kind of come in there and we begin to work with them and work with their team. What do you think about these people that say, well, there's nobody good to hire, you can't hire anybody good, nobody wants to work? Because that hasn't really been our experience. Would you rather hire somebody with a lot of experience or no experience?
I like no experience. I think when you're in an independent business, having no experience is typically the best, because you can take your processes, you can take your ways of life, and you can instill that into that person. I think a lot of times, especially in the automotive industry, every brick and mortar chain automotive store has scripts they follow, and they have procedures they follow. So then they go and they move to an independent, and all of a sudden, they sound like a robot. They don't know how to empathize with the customer because the customer's going off the script, because now it's a different client base. Same thing with all these other service-based industries, where when you're not one of those brick and mortars, you got to attack it from a different angle. The idea that people don't want to work, I think, you can definitely attest to this. It's not true. People want to work, but they want to work someplace where they feel valued, and they want to work someplace where they feel like they're getting a return of their investment. Because anytime you hire someone, that person is investing their time into you, and they're also investing their livelihood into you. They're depending on you to make money to support their family, and they're also making the investment of their time, which is the biggest thing in the industries that we're in. So I think if people are out there and they're struggling to hire people, what they're doing wrong is they're looking for employees. They're not looking for people. You have to look for people that you can turn into an employee, and that way you're going to have a base. You're going to be able to mold them in the way you want to, and then you're going to have an excellent employee who follows things the way that you built them, and then they're going to want to work because they're going to feel valued by you, and they're going to feel like their time being invested in you is great, and they're going to work really hard.
So one of the things we do here is, we have regular reviews, and you obviously work with us, and part of that is trying to figure out what your goals are. The intent behind that obviously is to make sure that everybody feels like they have a place that they can grow into. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you sit down for someone for the first interview and you throw out that big question, what's your goal? You're going to get a lot of I don't know, I'm just looking for a job. And it's the same thing with an objection to a sales call. That person is not objecting to the price. There's another reason they're doing that. If they're saying, oh, I don't know, they could be nervous because it's their first interview they've had in, 2 years, all this kind of stuff. So what I find is best is to just attack everything from kind of a friendly angle, whether that's goal setting, whether that's an interview, whether that's sales. When we sit down with someone to interview them, it is not, we don't have a piece of paper where we're just reading questions. One of my favorite questions that you asked someone in an interview we did recently was, if you were to win an award for anything that you do, what award would you win? Immediately, that breaks down the barrier of this person thinking, oh, they're going to ask me a bunch of questions to prove my skills. No, they're asking me a personal question. They're asking me to look inward. And then immediately that creates a super friendly kind of, that barrier gets knocked down. So what I find...
That girl bombed that interview, by the way.
Yeah, big time. big time. So yeah, I think anytime you're doing goal setting, interviews, or even just, telling someone they did something wrong, you got to attack it as if that person is a member of your family. You got to sit them down. You got to say, you got to come at it naturally, and you just let things flow the way they flow.
So like our company and name is in structure. And so like for those that don't know, we have a parent company, and then from there we have accounting. So we own an accounting company. We own a marketing company, Devin at Northbound Media, incredible. And, then we have a coaching firm. And so basically we kind of plug our company into other companies. And then from there, we give them the growth that we have. We position them as a leader in the industry, market them in a way that makes them an asset to their community. We standardize their financials. We really kind of update the way that they're operating internally with the new CRM, software and stuff. If you're writing on handwritten receipts, it becomes tough, And so in doing that, it's really cool in the way that we give people growth. But what do you think about the state of a lot of these businesses? Like, you've even been in on some of these meetings that we've been to. I've taken you to a couple of them, and we meet with some of these business owners that are still all handwritten, and they're literally in the meeting complaining about their employees, and the employees have no direction when this guy is in a meeting for 5 minutes. Like, how does that make you feel about the state of the industry? And I don't think that's the standard. I just think that there's a lot of them, and these are people that are trying to sell their business, but there's nothing really to sell.
Yeah.
It's a job that they own. They're trying to sell their headache. How does that make you feel? What do you think about that?
So what I've learned in the time that we've gone to these different businesses and approached people is, there's a lot of different kind of mindsets of business owners. The one that I think we're seeing the most right now is people who own a business because they want to own a business. They want to say they own a business. They want to say they're a business owner. They want the status of that, but they don't actually want to put in the work, because 30, 40 years ago, managing KPIs the way we do now, like, that didn't exist. You're managing your KPIs was their food on the table. Yeah. And that was working for them for 30, 40 years. But now in this new age where you have so many expenses, rent sky high, utilities are sky high, like, no service industry is the same as it was even 20 years ago. 20 years ago, if you do $400,000 in gross profit, you're rich. Now you do $400,000 in a year in gross profit. After you pay utilities, after you pay your employees, you don't have anything.
Yeah, gross profit, for those that don't know, that's after your cost of goods sold. So
Yeah.
like your labor, your direct labor, and then your parts, and then that there is your spendable dollars. And we're real big on following KPIs, and you're obviously instrumental in doing that. And we've even built our own internal CRM so that, for lack of better words, a 4-year-old would know if their business is doing what it needs to, because you can't overspend on your rent, and you can't, whatever. And so you have to continuously go back and look at like all of your costs and, and everything. And it's something that you need to manage.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these people who opened businesses 30, 40 years ago who are trying to get out now are realizing that. They're realizing that their way of doing business 30 to 40 years ago, which was great at the time, as expenses have risen and as wages have risen, and they haven't really done anything to their pricing or their marketing or their management of employees, they're finding that, whoa, this business was self-sufficient 10 years ago. I don't know what happened. I just need to sell it. I need to get out. And the other kind of business owner is the person that manages all their KPIs and they're looking for a return on the investment they've made. Those are the people that we like to work with a lot more. The people that realize what they have, they realize there's opportunity for growth, and they're not just people who have a business. The business was great 30 years ago and now it's not good. They have no idea why, because they haven't opened their books in 10 years, because all they do is, take a salary and then they go around town saying they're a business owner.
Yeah, it can be a challenge. When we go into due diligence, and you've been there too, when we go and we start interviewing these employees, one of the biggest problems that we find is like they know that the business owner is not fully engaged in the business. And so in a lot of cases, we're not finding that it's like bad staff. We're finding the staff is actually the asset. There's a lot of hidden gems there, but we're finding that they feel it, they see it, they know it. The lifts are broken, the equipment hasn't been updated, the sign is hanging off the building, there's lights out, and the owner just really isn't doing a lot of the things that they need to do to make the people feel safe and secure in the job. It's like if you're the leader and the owner doesn't really care, what do you care?
Yeah, especially now in the businesses that we work with, the biggest thing that I see in these shop owners that have been for 30, 40 years is they have no idea how to market, and that's why their revenue drops so much, is because you got all these companies that are starting up every year and they know how to market. They know how to use Facebook. They know how to use TikTok. They know how to use Instagram, and they are out there. So they are taking clients away from these people who were doing fantastic 30 years ago, and they have no idea why, because they haven't bothered to look. And we've run into that countless times of people who have no idea what their books look like. They have no idea why their revenue dropped.
If your business only works because you're there every day, you don't own a business, you own a job. At Lotus Private Equity, we help business owners build companies that run without them and become real assets. Learn how at lotuspe.us. That's lotuspe.us. Enjoy the rest of the show. Nick, sometimes when we go into these due diligence meetings, they come to us with like a stack of receipts. There's nothing there. There's nothing for us to ultimately buy. There's no value there, and so we'll go and recently we met with one, and the guy, he wanted like $1 million, right? Just a round number. You could tell it was an emotional number because that's what he felt it was worth to him. But at the end of the day, there was no customer base that we can leverage. The staff was not bought in, not trained. And, all he was really focused on was like, well, look how many inspection stickers I do. But then there's like nothing, there's no repeat customers, there's no nothing, there's no annual reoccurring revenue, right? Which is obviously what's very important. If somebody else is coming in, there needs to be an asset there that we can ultimately purchase. What advice would you give to some of these business owners that are probably, like, I feel like they know that they are in that spot, and they want something that is saleable, right?
Sure.
And so what advice would you give them to make sure that they can kind of button up their operation outside of calling us and obviously working with us for them to do it on their own?
Yeah, my best advice is to just take your books, whether it's last year's or year to date, and just put it into kind of this pie chart that we kind of live by. Are you spending less than 30% on labor? Are you spending less than 25% on cost of goods sold? Are you spending less than 20% on rent? And so forth, and try to figure out. I think if any business owner, and a lot of business owners aren't doing that right now, they're kind of just, oh, I need a person, I'll pay them whatever. Or, oh, my rent got raised. Oh, well, like, that's fine, I'll figure something out. Or, oh man, the energy bill has tripled. It's okay, I'll figure something out. And they don't actually look at the big picture. They don't look at where they can take money from, where they're overspending, and where to put that money so that everything's balanced. So the best advice that I can give is kind of just take your books, look at it, find the buckets and the percentages that you can live in and that you can be profitable in, put everything in there, and where you have those overages, find them from other buckets, move them around, and that way your books are going to be on spot on.
So in our businesses, we live by the 100% rule, right? And so that means a couple things, right? The customer needs to know 100% of what's going on 100% of the time. Like, no one wants to get their vehicle fixed, right? Sure. No one wants to have their vehicle towed into us. But in reality, creating the relationship and nurturing that relationship, it makes it easier because, again, we're solving the solution. The second part to that 100% rule is how we structure the profitability of the company, right? And so this goes back to the conversation about gross profit. And so the first, so if you take in, just in theory, so it's round numbers, you take in $100, right? The first $20 out is technician labor loaded, right? Mm-hmm. That's the cost of the person doing the work. The second 20 is your material cost, right? And so like in this business, auto repair, you can spend that 20% on the part. Then that gives you, say, roughly 60% in gross profit. And that's the money that you need to spend for all of the other stuff, right? And so from there, then you've got to have somebody answering the phones. You need service advisors. They can make about 10%. Then you've got about 30% that you can spend on your overhead, right? And so that's your rent, your lights, your insurance, all of that other good stuff, right? And so then you end up with about 10% left, and that you can spend on marketing, because I love when we meet these shops and they're like, well, I don't market. And you're like, well, your numbers are also really off, and loyalty, brand loyalty in general really isn't what it used to be. We find that like the best way that marketing works now is like consistency over time, right person, right message, right time. And in general, we are in the people business. We're not in the auto repair business. We are in a business of attracting people to us all the time. And so what that means for us is like, we're attracting customers, obviously. We're attracting vendors and nurturing all of those relationships, but we're also attracting staff. And so like our companies rarely have a problem trying to find good staff, because we're always building that bullpen, and that 10% goes in there. And then at the end of the day, you have about 10% left, and that would be for your savings. And that goes back into equipment. If the signs are falling off the building, repairs, all of the other things that you need, additional training, you must have savings at the end of the day. And so these numbers are kind of fluid, right? If you spend 25% on overhead, that's great. But, then you can use that somewhere else to continue to reinvest back in the business. Do you find that a lot of these people that we talk to are A, following that, and B, reinvesting back into the business with that bottom 10?
No, definitely not. And it goes back to what I was saying about these business owners kind of having the same mindset, even though pricing and utilities and rent and everything has gotten sky high. A lot of people don't realize how much they're spending in overhead. They don't realize how much they're paying people. They don't realize, even if they're not spending anything on marketing, they're not realizing why they have a problem attracting customers or attracting talent. And I know for a fact, you can attest to this, like how many businesses have we gone to that have $0 in savings?
Most of them. And so the reality is that they'll begin to tell you, well, but I am making the money. Mm-hmm. But you're not making the money. You can't, it's not worth anything to the next buyer if you haven't paid tax on that money. And so a lot of these guys are like, but look over here and look how much cash I'm taking. I'm like, A, that's unethical. And B, it's silly, because you're aging out and you're at this point where like you want to sell this thing, and your number now is just nothing more than a wish. It's not bankable.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was talking about a bit, about these business owners who just want the status of being rich and being a business owner. Okay, that's great. You have $200,000 in cash in your bank account. Your sign's falling off. You have 3 technicians that are about to leave because they're not getting paid enough. You have 2 lifts that don't work. Like, who cares how much money you have in your bank account? What is it worth to me?
Yeah, bays are like little rental properties. You're renting them out by the hour. And if the lift is broken, you've lost a rental property. If there's a person not in that bay, then you're losing that tenant. And I don't think that a lot of people fully understand that. And so I don't know how many shops we go into, and it's like 1-2 guys. It's a real sleepy shop. It's messy. They've got a bunch of like old junk cars and things like that in these bays, and you're like, what the heck is going on?
$2,000 in untouched inventory that they don't remember ordering.
It makes it real easy for us when we go in to show value right away, because first you kind of clean it out, hose it out, paint it, freshen it up, and we always come in with our money, and we invest in the infrastructure and the team, and begin to train. One of the other things that, and so your main thing is like you help us train the sales staff, and you make sure that the front of the house is in order, and you kind of keep an eye on everything. The other thing that we've done a really good job at is obviously recruiting technicians, but then from there building a really strong training program around our lead technicians, and then promoting from within. And we touched on it earlier about how we try to hire people based on attitude, aptitude, and ethics, not necessarily skill. You want to hire the right people and then give them the time, the tools, the training, and the accountability that they need to be successful. Because at the end of the day, in general, people don't want to come in and like do a bad job. Nobody wakes up in the morning and are like, man, I really want to go in and I want to screw this place up. Mm-hmm. It's they have a sense of pride in what they do, especially if you have the right people. And if you're not giving them the time, the tools, the training, and the accountability, what are you doing? And so what do you think about the way that we train technicians here, and then obviously distribute them to other buildings?
Yeah, I mean, we have such a great process, but it starts from the beginning. I think, anybody in the industry who has interviewed a technician can attest to this fact. Probably 75, 80% of technicians, when you ask them, what is your goal? They say, I want to own my own shop. Your job as a trainer, a business owner, is to turn that goal from I want to own my shop to for them to see value in the company enough to where they say, I want to grow within this company and I want to take a lead role in this company. So now they no longer have their own, their goal should no longer be own my own shop, because if they want to own their own shop, that means they want to leave you, So the way you train people is you make them feel like they're part of the solution. Immediately when we take in a service advisor, the first thing I say is, if you see anything or if you hear anything I say that you don't like in terms of our processes and you want to change something, tell me and we'll change it and we'll try it. The best thing that, especially working here, that I found was that any idea I had was go try it. Does it work? If it works, then do it. If it doesn't work, let's figure something else out. And immediately that makes people feel valued. They feel like you are taking time out of your day to appreciate that person and take their perspective, even if they're as low as an apprentice or as high as a service manager. Everybody's got to be treated as if they are building something with you. And when you do that, immediately they're bought into the company. And then that goal of I'm going to own my own shop is going to change into I want to help make this shop or any other shops that we may expand to be the best that we can be.
Fail forward if you have
Exactly.
to. Yeah, just keep trying things. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. That's a really cool perspective. And I don't know, what do you think about this general idea of like, well, we've been doing it this way forever, right? Like, no, we're not going to change it. We've been doing it this way forever, because we've seen that in a bunch of meetings too.
Yeah, I think so many people are just stuck in their old ways. And the fact of the matter is, and you can look at this not just in a need-based service industry, but pretty much every industry across the board has changed drastically. You're talking about the advent of AI. You're talking about texting people instead of phone calls. You're talking
people don't even really answer the follow-up phone. That used to be something that would differentiate us from everybody. You actually got us away from that, because when the customer would come in for service, we always call forever, right? It's the way we've always been doing it. We've done it this way forever. We've always called people after the service, and we started noticing over the past couple of years, especially after COVID, like the world is different after COVID. And so once we started kind of beginning to look at the data, because we're really big on data, people just don't answer the phones after the service. And they'll text us back and they'll leave us good reviews and everything, but it's like they don't want to be bothered.
Yeah, and as a challenge to anybody listening to this, any business owner who is still trying to do outreach via cold calls and phones, like take out your phone, click missed calls, and see how many missed calls you have from spam calls. And you're a business owner, you probably don't have any debt, so you're not getting half as many phone calls as the average person is, because the average person has mounds of consolidated loans and debt and car payments, where these people, their information is everywhere, so they're getting spam calls. I know myself, I probably get 10 to 15 a day. If you call me and you're not in my contacts, I'm not answering, because I'm going to assume it's a spam call. You have to use that and think of every customer in that mindset. Why would they answer your call? They're going to answer a text because there's not a lot of spam texts, and most spam texts are like AI generated. They can tell right away. But if you text a customer, hey, this is, James from Precision Auto, just wanted to check in, they're going to give you that text back. But if you call them from a, random 413 number, your odds of them answering the phone are pretty low.
It's pretty low, yeah, unless they're expecting the call.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. Hey, I want to wrap up, and I really appreciate you being on and talking, and obviously, we'll talk a lot more, and I appreciate everything that you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think just kind of in closing, like, what would you say to these business owners that are trying to find a way out?
The best thing to do, take the 100 rule, look at your revenue. Are you fitting in the 100 rule? If yes, great. Do you want to expand? Give us a call. We'll help you expand. Do you not fit in the 100 rule and you're trying to find a way to get out of the massive amounts of debt? Give us a call. We'll get you out.
That's cool, man. Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for listening to Owner Optional. If you want to learn more how we help shop owners build businesses that don't depend on them, visit lotuspe.us. That's lotuspe.us. We'll see you in the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.